so I haven't progressed much on anything yet. I mean, before I left for vacation, I had a chat with Shahaf on the approach to the P2P testing using Hive. I will pick up from our discussion today and continue building on what we agreed, Shahaf. So that's my update for the P2P testing. Do we want to go around with every other team to see where they are with the shared mempool? And are we on track to commence testing from the first week of October? Dan, do you want to go?
Sure. We started implementing this week. So I think based on what we're seeing, we should be ready early October, first week of October. Yeah, we're working through a few places where we've made decisions that have slightly deviated from the spec, and we're going back to those now and making sure that everything's up to speed. So we've talked to Yoav and Dror a little bit about a few of those deviations, and we're going back to those now. So yeah, I don't think first week of October will be a problem for us.
Sounds good. Vid and Will, do you guys have an update?
Yes, I want to talk. We are working on the P2P. We are testing ourselves to our ready test ourselves. And I have questions about this mempool idea. Are there any official canonical mempool idea is already published or something? Because
I did publish a couple of them for Sepholia and Godly, I believe. I can share that in this channel again. It was part of some place. I'll update the spec to reflect that as well. I think I already have it in my local version. I didn't submit a PR on the ETH Infinitism website. I'll do that, and then you'd be aware of it as well.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
That's it. I don't have anything else.
Cool. Sheriff, from your side?
Yeah, we made a good progress in connecting to other nodes. We are not able yet to exchange user operations, but we are working on it.
Cool. My only, concern, given that a new testnet is launched, I think the original plan for decommissioning of Godly was at the end of the year. If we are likely to slip in our dates of 1st of October, then it probably makes sense for us to have the environment set up on the new testnet. But that comes with its own caveats of ensuring we have sufficient coverage of MEV boost and other things. So in case any team feels they are not able to meet the first week of October deadline, then probably we need to revisit on those plans.
Okay, we haven't made much progress on the mempool. I did spend some time thinking about the testing environment, because I looked at all the launchers, the launcher architecture we had, which is quite basic, the test execution launchers. Now, basically, most of the launchers are quite the same Docker Compose. My suggestion is to streamline on using Docker Compose, not on a JavaScript, and that each bundler will be a Docker image. This way, we can have the current test will become one standardized Docker Compose file, which bring up a node, deploy, find given addresses given in the environment, and then launch the respective Docker image of a bundler. And this way, we can also have an integration test by creating Docker Compose, which takes two bundlers and bring them up together. And within this Docker Compose, we will also bring up the test itself. The idea is that the test will run within this Docker Compose. This way, the test will be completely independent. Right now, there's a small glitch that one test can break another. Not that it's too critical, but the idea is that the same Docker configuration can test any combination of two, might be easy. So yes, we want to put that forward and create that Docker Compose. I almost don't think there is a needed change from the Docker image of the respective groups. Maybe we will add some standardized environment variable. So we'll ask them to change to use this environment variable instead of their own. No more, I think no more than that.
But sorry, Drew, the test that you're referring to is the standalone RPC test, right? Not the peer-to-peer, because I believe I had a chat with Shahaf.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm suggesting is first to have the standard test, single server test using this framework. And then once it is there, I can create in the same manner a test that runs on two bundlers. I create a Docker Compose that bring bundler A and bundler B. And the test will use two RPC URLs of bundler A and bundler B, see that it works with one, and the bundler B execute as expected. Basically, we are trying to look at the side effects, how we communicate to one bundler and see the other bundler sees all this information.
Right, because the discussion I had with Shahaf was probably to use Hive for the peer-to-peer aspects. But,
yeah, we thought, yes, we thought about it, and now the issue that I raised is that our bundles are much more dependent on EVM context in terms of validation. So Hive, I'm not sure about whether Hive is the best approach or not, but because Parta has done the most progress and Etherspot has done the most viewable progress on the peer-to-peer implementation, then I thought that Parta might have a good reasoning behind it, and I agree with it. Like if we can do something like a black box testing like Hive, that would be better. The question is, can we do it?
Yeah, I'm going to commence work. I'll keep you updated on my progress. If it doesn't, then probably we can drop that idea and proceed with what Dror suggested on the existing setup. I mean, I agree having two separate test suites, one specific to RPC, the other one for peer-to-peer is not ideal. But if Hive works, I mean, as I said, I was coding initial bits and had some idea. I haven't tested the entire setup. I'll keep you updated on my progress, and then we can probably defer the decision to the next call, maybe. So there was one question that we had from the Fuse team. They were wondering, is it possible for us to add time to live to a user op? Because they've noticed that a user op ends up being in the mempool for quite a long time, and as a result, that results in certain issues. So it was a question from them. Does the teams agree with the concept of time to live for a user op?
Actually, I think we have in the spec time to live for user op in the mempool. I don't recall the number. I think this said for 10 blocks. Shahaf, do you remember? I agree that there should be a time to live in the mempool.
I don't remember. I remember us discussing. I think that we have. I'm not sure that we have that value. Maybe we have the amount of time that's needed, like for the user operation to be valid, like that it's not expiring too soon. But I'm not sure about time to live in the mempool. Like if you think, I think so. Actually, now that I think of it, yeah, maybe we do have, because I do remember talking about it. Okay, that we also added this value. But we can check. We can double check our ERP.
I'm not aware of it. I'm also not sure it's necessary. Like each local bundler could likely make their own decisions of how big they want their mempool to be.
No, there isn't the should be, which is something that the user op differ from normal transactions, is the difference between RPC forwarders, like plain nodes and bundlers. A bundler will notice that the user op is invalid the first time he tries to include it in a block and then drop it. An RPC node will only do the first validation. It is valid, and it will stay in the mempool until it gets expired, even though it got invalidated, because an RPC node never does the second validation. So we need to define some way for it to expire user operations. Normal transactions have implicit expiry when the nonce advances, but with user operation, it is possible it will get invalidated without ever being included.
Well, we have expiry with we can use the nonces also, right? We have that, and then use, like, you can in your RPC node set a configuration of like max mempool size or however long you want to hold on to things. It doesn't necessarily need to be part of the protocol that there's a maximum amount of time.
Maybe
But
you're
then
right.
you'll have different.
There's no absolute maximum value on that. Yes, it's more
No.
like memory optimization.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
then you would have differing implementations across different bundlers, right? I mean, should we set a minimum, maybe not a maximum necessarily, but a minimum time that a user op is valid in the mempool?
Why
I
should we
mean, there
care?
could be reasons a bundler might not pick up because it might not find a user op to be financially feasible enough, given the max priority fee. So that would continue to remain in the mempool. So can we set, I believe earlier we used to have, at least on Ethereum testnets, 50 blocks before it gets discarded. So is there something of that sort that we could set, a minimum that you have to retain? After that, it's up to the implementation to either discard it or retain it.
I'm trying to think of the implication of not standardizing on this value. If some bundler drops it earlier than another,
Yep.
the effect might be that it will receive it again, eventually. Because of a mempool propagation, he dropped it, and later another bundler publish it, and will get it again. I'm trying to understand how normal Ethereum nodes handle such a case.
There is no such case because technically there is no expiry on Ethereum transactions.
But also,
Yeah,
is it that big of an issue? Like, if I guess you have to require that someone is doing before they send, like, before they propagate the UO over the P2P network, that they've made sure that it's valid still. And that's the difference. That's the difference, that you're saying that RPC nodes don't necessarily do that each time. And if these UOs are stale, like by N blocks, there's a higher chance that they become invalidated.
Okay, you mentioned something important. You validate a user operation when you receive it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you propagate it immediately, that's okay. You are not expected to propagate something that you didn't recently validate. So if you ever try to repropagate a user operation, then you are expected to revalidate it. Otherwise, you can be considered a spammer. If you kept a user operation like 10 blocks in your memory and then you publish it without revalidating it, you're exposing yourself to becoming a spammer in case it got invalidated. To summarize, it's not a protocol issue. You are expected to propagate immediately when you receive, immediately after you validate. You want to keep it in memory, it's okay. The only nuance I'm adding here is that if you ever want to publish it again, for some reason, revalidate it. So it is always valid the time you propagate.
Yeah.
This is something that was implicit. Now we'll maybe saying it more explicit. And keep it in memory as long as you like. I think there should be, and there must be some recommendation on that. It's not a spec, but it is a recommendation for normal behavior of a network, and I'm trying to think what anomalies can come in case of these numbers vary. But again, at most it's not a spec standard, but a recommendation.
Yeah.
Recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see like the big issue with bundles having different like different values here, like in terms of what they expect or like expires too soon, or like basically their window should be like should intersect to a large extent. Otherwise, they would just spam each other. But I think that most reasonable bundles are going to run it in a way that is like that they are functional, and that's not going to be an issue. I don't think that should be part of the spec probably.
So not even the recommendation, or
well, a recommendation may be, but that's a recommendation is not like as I said, it's not mandatory. It's a recommendation.
Yeah.
So we should mention it probably, but not force a strict value. What do you think about?
What is a recommendation on a Ethereum block node?
I mean, I don't know of late, but earlier it used to be 50 blocks. If a transaction was not included in 50 blocks, it used to get removed from the local mempool. That's what it used to be. I don't know what it is right now.
No, is it written anywhere?
I don't know. I've not seen anything written, but I'm saying by personal experience, I've seen these messages, transaction not included in the pool in 50 blocks, so discarding. I've seen that message.
Okay.
I think that's in like a node specific thing. I don't know if it's like each
that's
local
what I
node
mean.
and local RPC providers making that your own decision there. And like, I think that's fine to just leave up to each bundler, you know, how much they want to keep in their mempool.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Yeah, any other topics for discussion? Does anybody else have anything?
So I've missed a few meetings. I was curious if Dror or Shahab could give an update on the latest changes you guys are making to the entry point contract, as well as an update on the alternative mempool stuff that you guys have been looking at.
Okay. In these two aspects, you might have seen some of the pull requests. We are trying to review them thoroughly before we change. We are moving the validation functions, actually based on your ideas, Dan.
Inspired by you.
That is never really deployed on chain. This is the simulation validation contract. So maybe we can, first of all, maybe we can take it offline, like some suggestion about what the validation function to add. Secondly, we are no longer require specific functions. So in fact, the bundler can use different contract for validations, because it becomes a bundler specific code. We require the outcome. We don't require the code. The entry point gets slimmer with only on-chain code, which is a very, very good idea.
Okay, just a consideration that we had, something that an issue that we had because of that is basically once we removed some code, you run a different code in a simulation, a different contract with a different entry point, okay, that has different code hash, obviously, between simulation and execution, because the simulation functions are no longer actually deployed. That basically caused, like, opened up another attack vector. Okay, that was, for example, when you look at deposito, which is a very innocent looking function in Solidity, but once you remove the code to a different contract, what happens is that basically the deposit to of the entry point that has the simulation code is cheaper than the one that is on chain, which basically caused another violation. Like this allows malicious sectors to distinguish between simulation and execution, basically. Okay, once you change the costs between simulation and execution, that allows it opens up this attack vector. So we did need to take that into account. I'm not sure if I was clear.
Yeah, I understood. Yeah.
Cool. Any other discussions?
Anything on the alt mempool stuff?
Yeah, the alt mempool, we were trying to build it again in a secure way so that we can, as I said, the alt mempool by API. Again, okay, I need to circulate this document even it's a raw state. And the other thing that I thought maybe it is best to define, again, as you suggested, a schema for what an alt mempool will use. It will give a lot of rope for bundlers to hang themselves, but we will try to audit the fact that there will be entries in this suggested mempool. It doesn't mean that that you can use them. For example, whitelisting opcodes, while it seems critical, it's a very easy way to making yourself vulnerable. And we try to make the mempools isolated. That is, if you're using alt mempool and there is a bug in one of the contracts in that alt mempool, we want to isolate so that only contract that use this, so only user that use this contract will get affected. With opcodes, it becomes contagious. That is, this mempool can contaminate the entire bundler, regardless of which mempool. This is very, very tricky, very, very hazardous. So we try to do it very, very cautiously. That said, we want to have a single schema to allow it, so that there will be one implementation for each bundler for the schemas, and then it will be only configuration. So yes, I will try to circulate as soon as possible this document. I'm sorry it takes too long.
No, I appreciate the detail you guys are putting into this. It's going to be much easier for all bundlers to use something that's standardized. And then just to double check on the next update of the entry point, are the changes? Is the major change just removing the validation functions? Or are there any other major changes, or everything else is small?
There is another change that we are currently discussing as well. I think though we forgot to mention. Okay, there is a change that we are currently not sure of, but we are still discussing, is whether to allow staked paymasters to basically read just as loads, like read access from another contract. Of other random external contracts that would obviously make their life easier with oracles and maybe approvals and stuff like that on other tokens. So read access for staked paymasters may be possible, but I'm not sure. I'm currently not sure.
I think there's one or two other nuanced validation rules. I thought you mentioned more things that will require major modification to the bundlers. This will require a small. I think there's one more, a small one. We do need to make a list of all these changes and compare the list. The other thing we are thinking, as you know, we are forward thinking about eventually enshrining 4327 into the protocol. So we are thinking that, and we're trying to think if and what changes we need to make today will it help to 4327. Obviously, there will be changes. So whether to try to collect more of these changes and do this change, hopefully in one leap, to the EAP enabled, or do it in the meantime. That is, whether we want to change with the 0.0 to introduce changes that are not really required for 4327 at the moment. We tend to limit those and try to move all those changes together later in the next version.
That makes sense. Great. Well, a list would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, we
of
try to curate this.
Yeah, we are working on this. Once it's actually finalized, the changes that we want to make, then we will have something concrete to share. Just a release note or something like that.
Awesome. Is there, I'm curious if the changes that you're making, will you be making the updates to the reference bundler at the same time, or would it make sense to have bundlers attempt to integrate the new pending version before actually releasing it, just in case there is changes that bundler teams might have issues with that could impact the changes that are being made? Or are we pretty confident in the change set won't be kind of needed to be kind of quickly changed because bundlers have issues with it?
A good question. I'm trying to think forward. We do have accounts that use the existing bundler. That is, bundlers will have to support at the minimum 2 versions. The new versions, the existing 0.6 and the 0.7. You're asking that whether the 0.7 will be replaced soon or later. In any case, bundlers will have to manage more than one. We hope to, but it's more than one. They need to handle more than one. That is, 3 is also a possible number to support. I'm not sure if any of the bundlers right now support more than one, because right now there's exactly one. I saw it in the code that some say they support even the old versions. We don't. The reference bundler support only the latest. I will try to keep this support, try to make it dual purpose for the latest bundler and also the new one.
Okay.
That makes sense. My question is more so, does it make sense to have the release, like once your team is confident in it, to have the release kind of still in a pending state where we have the bundler teams take a look at it and start trying to integrate it before we technically cut it as a full release, just in case there is anything that might, the community might want to push back on in the change set. Obviously bundlers can also, look at all the PRs and pay attention to that, but I think it might make sense for there to be a few week period where your team is done making changes before it's cut.
No, I completely agree. We will release it as an experimental next version.
Great.
I think that we will implement it into the reference bundler and tests. We expect other bundlers to look at it, try to implement it. We don't encourage any wallet to jump in forward, except for testing purposes. And we will take any backlash. Someone tell you this is wrong. Hopefully nobody will say this is all completely wrong. Please redo this version. But fixes, I agree. There will be fixes. Hopefully, in a simulation. The nice thing about simulation that it doesn't change the entry point itself. And I can't force you to use the simulation contracts we use. If you want to use others, go ahead. Please inherit and submit a different version that we can all share and use. So I don't see a major obstacle about it. Yes, it's going to be an experiment. It's going to be in a state where we say, yes, look, this is a temporary version that we need to look forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just a period in which it's possible there could be a change to the entry point contract that could change its address within the same version number, just so we don't have to quick release another entry point version.
Yes, but this is very unlikely because we didn't change, even though we will change the entry point at this point. I'm trying to think. I don't think we changed anything in the API. That is.
Wait, I'm not sure about that, though. I think we might have changed something.
Okay, I might be.
The nonce manager wasn't there, I believe.
There is no nonce manager. It is internal to the entry point. It didn't.
Yeah. Okay.
Since the entry point is now left with we removed all the reverting function, all the view functions. We didn't remove anything else from it. Okay. I try to write it down. Let me not try to speculate it during the code. I'll write it down. I think that we kept the same API so that yes, it will be a change in the address, but I don't think there's going to be another one.
Okay.
We slimmed down the entry points. So as long as there is no major hazard because of this slim down. By the way, it does add a difficult to grasp validation rule that an account is not allowed to reflect on the entry point itself. Because during simulation, it will see the simulation code, and during execution, it will see the final code. So the account is not allowed to use Xcode hash or Xcode size on the entry point.
So this validation. Sorry, Drew. This validation is added as a part of a new validation contract and not as part of the custom tracer, or are there changes to the custom tracer?
The custom tracer will be ran against a custom against a different contract, not against the entry point contract.
Okay.
So
yeah, that would mean there would be a slight change on the bundlers, right? We might have to.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. If there is a test version that you have on any of the test nets, it will probably help the bundler teams to probably validate or test this out when you deploy the new version of the entry point contract before.
The reference bundler will use it.
Okay.
When you call, in general, when you do the trace call, you will pass another parameter which is called state override, and you will provide the stated version. So you say that validate the simulate validation function, but it's a function that doesn't exist on entry point. But I give you an alternate code and use this alternate code instead. And this alternate code expose all the functionality of entry point, but using a different contract. So as Shahaf mentioned, we validate against that and then execute against the production. So if, for example, if there is a function that an account runs during a simulation that doesn't exist on entry point, it will succeed in simulation and crash on the production, and this is a griefing point. So, for example, what the account is allowed to deposit to the entry point. This is the way it raises its. So obviously, the simulation has this deposit function. It inherits from entry point, so it has this deposit function. The nuance that Shahaf mentioned, that we made sure that not only it exists, but it takes more gas than on a real entry point. Why more? Because if it takes less, then you could specify a low gas value when you call it during simulation. It succeeds. Then you try it on a production. It uses more gas, out of gas, reverts on chain, and this is an attack on the bundler.
And by the way, the gas cost was different not because of a code change in the deposit function, but simply because of how Solidity is basically handling the jump table and stuff like this. So it was only like 30 gas different, but 30 gas difference is still enough if you want to be precise about the calculation. Okay, it's still enough, and you can amplify it by simply calling deposit to multiple times. Okay, so it was the exactly same code and in deposit to the exactly same function on different contracts. Okay, it will cost differently simply because of how Solidity is implemented in terms of how it jumped between internal functions.
Yeah, so it was a hack we had to add to this simulation validation to close this gap to make sure it cannot be used as an attack vector. So yes, this separation into a separate contract is open us to a different kind of attacks that we need to make sure that we close them, and we hope that we did with all of them. But it is make the validation much more flexible. So we want to pursue this path. Okay, I think that's all.
That's it for me.
Cool.
I think these are most of the changes. Yes.
So, Chef?
I said I think that these are most of like the major changes that we have. If we have something else done, we will obviously publish it and you will review it. But we are not pushing something just because we want to.
Appreciate it.
Cool. So yeah, as there are no further questions, thanks everyone. Have a nice day. We'll meet in 2 weeks' time. Cool. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye everyone.
Bye.